Good evening. Welcome to Simpson at 8. This is the first of many shows, interviews, and debates that will be held here on my TV ahead of the 2018 general elections. We are pleased to have with us this evening Professor Biman Prasad, the leader of Fiji's oldest political party, the National Federation Party. Professor Biman Prasad, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Let's start by discussing the elections before we move on to the issues that will decide how people go. You've been campaigning the last few weeks, the last few months. How do you see NFP's chances on 14th of November?
Well, very good, because the people had the opportunity to see us in Parliament for the last 4 years. We rolled out some of our major policies about 14 months ago. We wanted people to understand our policies, critique our policies, and I must say that the support we are getting throughout the country with respect to our policies, with respect to how we performed as an opposition party in Parliament, that gives me extremely good confidence.
So you think you'll be making some headway, yeah?
That the NFP is on its way.
Because let me just point out, in the last elections,
Sure.
NFP 27,000 plus votes,
Yep.
5.5% of the vote. You received 8,097 votes, of course much less than Bainimarama, Rote Mumu. Even the AG says that he beat you in the numbers. So how do you see the numbers moving this year? Are more people starting to lean towards what your message?
Good question, Stanley. In 2014, I had just come on board. The environment at that time was very different. The constitution was imposed. There was a very short period of time for opposition political parties to campaign. People didn't know me as a political leader. And so I was very pleased. That we were able.
You managed to get through.
We managed to get through, and we managed to get 3 seats. And then, we managed to be an effective opposition party, although a minor party, but very effective opposition party in Parliament. And that is why I think this election is going to be completely different from what we had in 2014.
Yeah, you're now a minor party. You're the oldest political party, been around for 50 plus years. For decades, one of the country's major political parties, fallen on hard times, one would say. Started in 1999, you didn't win a single seat. In 2001, just 1 seat. You did not win again one seat in 2006, and then won 3. What happened to the National Federation Party? Why did people leave? Why did people leave the party?
Well, there could be a number of explanations for that, and it's probably not enough time to go into all the explanations, but I think the NFP played a very important role from 1987 right up to 1997, when it actually negotiated the 1997 Constitution. Of course, there are various explanations as to why NFP might not have won a single seat in 1999. That's behind us now.
One reason that was given was the partnership that Jairam Reddy had with Rambuka. Do you see that as a reason? Some call it one of the biggest political miscalculations in Fiji's political history.
It could be, but if you look at the history between 1992 and 97, in fact, in 1992, Rambuka became Prime Minister with the support of the Fiji Labour Party. And then in 1994, NFP came back as a major opposition party, and Rambuka came back with a bigger majority. So the NFP leader had to work with the leader of the government to review the 1990 Constitution.
One would say it was a big leap from 1990
that's right.
to 97.
Yeah, but then, having supported Rambuka for Prime Minister in 1992, the Labour Party came back in 1999 to win the majority. And perhaps the NFP's concentration at that time was the Constitution, which was a great Constitution, and possibly, bread and butter issues put forward by some good policies by the Labour Party at that time could have made the difference. But again, we still had quite a large number of votes. I think about 36 to 37% of the total
but couldn't
votes.
win the seat.
Couldn't win the seat because it was a constituency-based system, alternative vote system. So things could have been different. If we had a proportional representation, we could have had about 8 seats in 99.
Could be. Now, I'm trying to bring us from where we were to where we are to where the NFP is now. 2006 happened. Biman Prasad took over the government. Then 2014 elections happened. There was a big shift. I would say historical shift, where the Indian voters that used to, the Indo-Fijian voters that used to vote for Labour and NFP dramatically shifted their support to Biman Prasad and the Fiji First government. What did Biman Prasad do that gained the trust of the Indo-Fijian voters ahead of the NFP and the Fiji Labour Party?
Well, it may not necessarily have been trust. I think it was more to do with the prevailing political climate at that point in time, where a constitution was imposed, where the media was totally controlled, the opposition parties were not allowed to function for about 8 years, the trade union movement was basically banned. And so you had only Mr. Biman Prasad, out there in the field, and of course they imposed a constitution. And so the opposition parties...
Everyone else had been pushed aside.
Everyone else was basically pushed aside. The media was restricted from giving that coverage, and the election was held under very restrictive draconian laws, as well as the political environment. And there was a certain degree of fear that was deliberately created by Mr. Biman Prasad and his group, about what could happen and what could not happen if he wasn't in the power. And in fact, in one of his interviews in New Zealand, when he was asked, how can you avoid a coup, he basically said, vote for me, basically threatening the voters in 2014. But I think...
Would you say he'd have some basis to say that?
Well,
because he came in and,
Well, I don't know, but if I am a leader of a political party, if I'm taking the country to a democratic rule, I would never say, I would never threaten the voters that I am the only party, I am the only leader which can provide security, stability for our people. You never say that. When you say that we have brought back democracy, in a democracy, everybody has an equal chance, whether you are a small party or a big party, and strange things have happened in politics.
And so everybody should be able to guarantee security in this country.
Exactly, and any leader who goes on to the people and says, I am the only one, then you know that that person does not deserve to be a leader of a country.
Historically, he would say that he was the one who stepped in and saved the country in 2000, and then stepped in 2006 from what he said, to save the country and bring about the changes that he's stating now, bring equal citizenship.
All the more reason for him not to say that. All the more reason for him not to threaten people. In fact, people are raising questions about what happened in 2000. He was the commander of the Fiji military forces. So there are all those questions that remain. But
the questions of the past.
Questions of the past that he knows and he can only answer. I don't have the answers to that.
Right.
But the point is that when you say that we are a genuine democracy, then no leader in his or her right mind would ever threaten the voters to say, if I'm not there, then you are not guaranteed this or that.
There'll be trouble.
There'll be trouble. That's not something that any leader ought to say in a democracy.
All right. Now, let's come now to the situation we have at hand. 2014, you've got the lineup 51 members.
51 candidates.
How would you describe the caliber and experience?
Stanley, when I became the leader in 2014, NFP, of course, had a history. We had a different political history. It was born out of a struggle for equality, justice, and fairness. But when I became the leader in 2014, I said to the party that we need to change this party, make this party a party of the future. And I'm very happy, and I'm very happy today, that NFP today is a truly multiracial party. We have a good caliber of candidates from every walk of life, every section of the community. And what we are presenting to the people in this election is a very committed team of individuals, men and women, young and experienced, for the next government. And I am very confident. In fact, if you look at our lineup, you will see the caliber and the quality of...
Are you ready to lead if you're given the mandate from the people?
Well,
why do you think you'd make a good prime minister?
Well, as a party, we are a team. We we don't base everything on one individual. I'm the leader of the party. My job is to lead the party into the election, to win the election. And if the people give us the opportunity to govern, we will govern effectively, efficiently, with dignity and respect.
Let's talk about that leadership.
Yeah, sure.
What would you say is would make you a good leader? What's the experience and qualifications that you have?
Well, I really don't want to brag about my past, my
political election. Come on, Biman.
contribution in the university. I reached the highest level of professor. I was dean of the faculty. I've done a lot of consultancies around the world, advised governments in the Pacific. And the last 4 years in Parliament, in opposition, I was also the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee for a while. I was removed by government, through the majority by changing the standing orders. But I was also Shadow Minister of Finance. I've responded to 3 or 4 budgets. I have been able to study not only what I used to study when I was a professor, but actually looking at the mechanics of what happens in terms of making good policy and how to balance, good politics with good policy. Good policy is not necessarily good politics all the time. So I think I have the experience of running a government.
Because this is what your critics say.
Yeah.
Your critics have stated you've done a lot of studies,
Yeah.
a lot of research, great economist, academic, which Biman Prasad describes as just the big fancy titles that you have.
Yeah.
But in reality, they say Biman has little or no practical experience in running anything or managing anything. In your whole life, you've just been a researcher and a critic. How would you respond to that?
Well, you'd ask the same question of Mr. Biman Prasad and many of his operatives in the Fiji First Party. We've had many leaders who've come out from outside and have become effective leaders. And I think the experience that I've had over the last... And finally, Stanley, I would like the people to judge me. And what I can tell you is in the last 4 years, I've gone around the country. I know that the people trust me. The people trust me, they trust my judgment, they trust my ability to lead a government.
All right. In essence, what is the main message that the NFP is taking to the people in this election campaign? And why do you think, how do you expect to change the minds of the 202,000 people that voted for Biman Prasad? 290,000 that went for Fiji First.
Yeah.
You would have to make a big shift and dent into that.
Sure.
So what's the message that you're taking?
Good question. 2 things, Stanley. One, I have trust in our people. I think our people have the ability to see through things, to understand things. So in many ways, people have seen this government not only for 4 years, but for 8 years of Biman Prasad leadership. Message that we are taking to the people that this is an expensive government. This is a government which is relying on running the economy on tourism and government spending. It's easy to spend money. It's easy to borrow money. And this is a government which has piled up debt, and we are now paying hefty amounts. And I can give you examples of that when we talk about it.
We'll explore that in the next
we'll explore that. But the message we are taking to the people is we want to reduce the high cost of living, unprecedented. We want to raise people's income. That's why we've talked about minimum living wages. We've talked about bringing back the sugar industry, which has basically collapsed under Biman Prasad regime in the last 12 years. We want to rescue the dairy industry. We want to ensure that people in the informal and squatter settlements, have affordable housing. We want to restore the health facilities in this country.
So bread and butter issues.
Bread and butter issues, social services, health, and the economy.
All right. We're with Professor Biman Prasad, the leader of the National Federation Party. Simpson at 8 continues after the break. Welcome back. You're watching Simpson at 8. We're with Professor Biman Prasad, the leader of the National Federation Party. Now, in the last week, the Prime Minister and the Attorney General have aimed, made a lot of attacks on you, essentially. One of the attacks, essentially, is basically calling you a coward, saying that you're afraid of the Eat OK. Are you afraid of the Eat OK?
I don't know where they're coming from. In fact, all I can say that they are both, Mr. Bainimarama and Mr. Ayaz Sayed Qayyum, are in a panic mode because they know that the people are leaving their Fiji Fest party in droves and joining NFP. So
what's the evidence you see of that?
This is from all the meetings, the feedback that we're getting, and people's ability to actually see what happened in the last 4 years. So Mr. Bainimarama seems to be confused. You know, on one hand, in 2014, you know, he made this big song and dance about everybody being a Fijian, and then he goes into a meeting and says, Biman Prasad is the leader of a party which looks after the interest of only Indo-Fijians. I mean, he suddenly forgot that we are all Fijians. You know, it's quite racist of the Prime Minister to actually make that kind of claim in a political meeting. What is he saying? What is he saying that that I can't represent the interest of all the people in this country? And
well, he's saying that you've sort of been staying silent on certain attacks or certain statements have been made by, say, Sodelpa, for instance. He said, when Sodelpa attacks Indo-Fijians, the leaders of the NFP go under the table.
Again,
these words. You never hear a single word from Biman Prasad. That's his exact words. I've just
again, he's being racist because he should be the last person to talk about Indo-Fijians or Ethiopians, because he and his party are saying everybody is a Fijian. Now, he's confused because...
But is it true?
Listen to this. Because he's confused. On one hand, he says everybody is a Fijian. Then he is a Minister for Ethiopian Affairs. We have no issues about having a Ministry of Ethiopian Affairs. And then when Sodelpa members of Parliament, you know, talk about Ethiopian issues, you know, they talk about land, they talk about Ethiopian culture. You have a ministry, he is a minister. Then if he is leveling them as racist, then that's not my job. It's his job, you know, to tell them what they are saying, whether they are right to actually talk about Ethiopian issues. So
is it true? Is it true that you have not spoken out? Because this is the words that he says. When Sodelpa attacks Indo-Fijians, leaders of the NFP go under the table, and you never hear a single word from Biman Prasad.
I would be very happy to see what evidence Mr. Bainimarama has got over the last 4 years, where as a leader of a party, I have not stood up on issues affecting everyone, whether it's Ethiopian issues, whether it's Indo-Fijian issues. But for him to go into a political meeting and put this out, you know, I know what's the motive. The motive is to get the votes of Fijians of Indian descent. That is his political ploy, and this is the fear. This is the fear-mongering that both Bainimarama and Ayaz Sayed Qayyum are trying to put out to the Fijians of Indian descent, and so that they can get them back to the Fiji Fest
So, for instance, one example is saying,
that is the ploy.
Has NFP responded to call by some members of Sodelpa that Fiji become a pre-Christian state?
Well, again, you know, it's fear-mongering, because when he says that we have a very good constitution, the constitution doesn't have any provision for a Christian state. And we have always maintained, the National Federation Party has always maintained right from its history that, you know, Fiji should remain a secular state.
So your position is should be a secular state.
Exactly. And so this man, you know, while saying that it's not in the constitution, goes and talks to a particular group of people, a particular religious group, and saying, oh, you know, suddenly Fiji is going to become a Christian state. Again, you know, that's fear-mongering by both Mr. Bainimarama and Ayaz Sayed Qayyum and Fiji Fest candidates.
So basically, when you're saying that attacking your party, like he's not the only one that has attacked your sort of silence or partnership or something with Sodelpa. Your former candidate and colleague Tupondro Nindalo actually also left the party and said that you had become too close to Sodelpa. What do you see?
Well, there's a big difference in what Bainimarama and Sayed Qayyum are saying and what Ms. Don Nindalo said. She obviously felt very strongly about us having any dialogue with other political leaders, and she's entitled to that opinion, and I have no issues. As far as the NFP is concerned, we, as a leader of a political party, the NFP Management Board Working Committee authorized me and gave me the mandate to talk to any political leader,
So open up your lines.
including Mr. Baini Marama. So Tupo would have had a different view about it, and she's entitled to that view.
Because basically he stated that in 2004 that you have tried to support SODELPA to try and gain votes. And this is what he said, that Biman does not know that your actions will bring about more racial discrimination. He says, look to a party that's going to look after your interests, not sidestep you when you get attacked. This was his words. Maybe he does not care, but because of the assets that you have, you're well off. Yeah. But who will look after the poor Indo-Fijian cane farmer when things break loose? Certainly not Biman Prasad. That's why he thinks it's a good idea to back SODELPA, to support the GCC, and to try and get more votes. Yeah. But if things went wrong, you'd be well enough to get here. You go to New Zealand, Australia. In other words, he's the only one that can provide the security, and your opening the lines to try and talk to SODELPA and others is going to backfire on the population.
Well, that shows that this leader is a totally confused man. He calls himself a Democrat. He calls himself as a leader of a democratic nation. He talks about genuine democracy. He talks about protecting the sugar industry, but then he doesn't realize that under his leadership, the sugar industry is on the verge of collapse. From 3.6 million tons in 2006, we are down to 1.6 million tons. So whose interest is he protecting? He knows that many of the Fijians of Indian descent, Indo-Fijians, thereafter, who voted for him in 2014 are moving away from him. So to get their support, to keep them there, he goes out and he spews this racist, filth by scaring them.
You've been calling that in the media.
And saying that we can't. A leader in a democratic country.
So let's come to the issue of your sort of partnership or coalition that is with SODELPA. There is no partnership.
There is no. We said this in 2014. We have been a opposition party in Parliament, where SODELPA is the main opposition party. Right. We have to sit in the opposition with them. We talked to them, but as in 2014, we said very clearly then, and we are saying now that the NFP is going to fight the election on its own. We have 51 candidates, and it is premature.
Because you've called them now racist. Yeah. They've said, you see in the comments that it is you that is being accused of using race-based politics. Well, you and SODELPA are being accused of using race-based politics. That they are saying they are the ones that has removed the politics of race in the country. We have done all we can in the last 10 years or so, these are the words, to bring equality to the nations that we are now all called Fijians.
Well, he contradicts himself every minute. He's calling everybody a Fijian, then he goes and accuses a leader of a political party when he knows that the NFP is a truly multiracial party, and accuses me and the party of looking after the interest of only Indo-Fijians. Who is being racist? Not me. It's these people who talk about this. They are the ones who are dividing the people in this country, not us. But let me say this one more time, that I have said very clearly that the NFP will campaign on issues. We've been doing that for the last 14 months, and they know that they are losing the game on policies, and therefore they are ducking under the table and finding something like
And we will come to the issues. Now let me just get through race. Also, another one that's been
religion raised. And trying to divide the people.
Another one that's been raised that I'd like you to respond to is that they've alluded that you and your members are doing this Hindu-Muslim thing, something that they accuse some of your candidates of doing that to get Hindus not to vote for Muslims. What is your response? The AG slammed some of your candidates recently for making racist and bigoted statements.
Again, Stanley, if you look at who are the people who are talking about this, is essentially Mr. Baini Marama and Mr. Ayaz Said Kuyum and Fiji First MPs. I've traveled around the country in the last 4 years, and more recently during the campaign. No one has ever raised the issue of Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, nobody.
You're not making it a political issue.
So I have not heard, with the exception of one or two questions here and there, but nobody has said that to me. It's these people. I mean, Mr. Syed Qayyum goes everywhere and deliberately talks about this. So these are the people who are spreading these lies, not us, not NFP. And I've said this very clearly on record, that none of our candidates are doing that. And one of our candidates has been charged by FICAC. The case is in the court, and we'll let the court decide.
Let the court decide on that. Yeah. So very quickly, some of the key issues, that the common name. What is NFP's position?
Well, I said that in 2014.
Is this something you support?
I mean, we're all Fijians as stipulated in the Constitution, and we have no issues with that.
So the common name is okay with you. Now, on the Great Council of Chiefs and on the Fijian indigenous issues that's coming up, how are you looking to address that as opposed to the other political parties?
Well, it's interesting how the Fiji First Party and the campaigners are going around the country and saying, NFP will side with Sri Lanka and bring this or bring that. But they don't realize that they have imposed a constitution which is almost impossible to change. There is no provision for the Great Council of Chiefs in that constitution. And they forget that there is a Ministry of E-Toke Affairs. The Fijian administration is still in place, and we have no issues with that. The Prime Minister is the Minister for E-Toke Affairs. The Prime Minister is the chairman of the ITLTB board, which looks after the E-Toke land. So
come down to the point. How will you address?
So what I'm saying is that there is that provision in the Constitution, and so any government which comes into power will have to work within that provision in the Constitution.
Would you look to bring back the GCC?
Well, there is no provision in this Constitution, and there is no, it is almost impossible to change this Constitution. How are you going to bring a constitutional role?
Would it be something you would be looking into?
Well, we have said that we are going to look at how we can review this Constitution, because this Constitution has many draconian provisions. First thing we will do, a lot of people don't understand that all the decrees from 5th December 2006, right up to the last decree that the military government put out to determine the salaries of the Prime Minister, ministers and everybody else, all those decrees are preserved under Section 173 of the Constitution, and many of those decrees, like the media decree, the political parties decree and others, are very draconian decrees. And so what we will do, our priority in government would be to review, change and repeal some of those draconian decrees. That would be our focus.
All right. You're watching Simpson 8 with Professor Biman Prasad, the leader of the National Federation Party. After the break, the bread and butter issues that the NFP is taking to the people. Welcome back to Simpson at 8. We're with Professor Biman Prasad, leader of the National Federation Party. Now let's move on to some of the key issues that Ministry will decide the election. And in many ways, this election, it comes down to a referendum on Fiji First's record and achievements. And they've been touting their achievements and successes: sustained economic growth for the last 9 years, major infrastructure development on roads, access to water, free education, free bus fare for school students, tertiary loan schemes, increased social benefits for the wealthy, for the elderly. How do you propose to go against a record like that? Do they have a good record to run on?
Well, there are some good social policies that they brought, and that's the job of any government. And I can assure the people of this country that some of those good social policies, like free bus fare, social welfare allowances for our elderly, free medicine, but we're going to improve that. These are things that any government...
Well, they've said plenty of governments have talked about it, but did not deliver it.
Well, no, I think there were elements of these under all governments. Social welfare was always there. It's just that we have a bigger amount now. So some of those policies, good policies, any government and NFP government will also keep that. But if you look at the record of...
So which one would you keep?
Well, things like free bus fare, free medicine, social welfare allowances, education, and I'll explain to you how we are going to improve TELS and have more scholarships. But let me just go on to the record of economic performance. The media and the Fiji First Party and the Minister for Economy and the Prime Minister, go around singing this song. It sounds like our record now, that they have had unprecedented growth in this country under their leadership. In fact, if you look at the average growth in the last 12 years, it's barely 2%. And
2.6%.
2% between 2006 in the last 11 years is a very modest growth. I mean, compared to countries which have 5%, 4% growth.
You're saying that we should be doing better?
We should definitely be doing better, and I tell you why we have not done well. Basically, in the last 3 or 4 years, there's been average growth of 3 to 4%. That's fine, but if you look at the average in the last 12 years, it's very modest. It's almost 2%. And the economy right now is riding on just
what the AG say? Well, you're saying 2%. AG is saying it's growing at an average of around 2.6% per annum.
Well, I don't know where he got that 2%, but I'm looking at average growth from 2006 right up to 2010, 11, and right up to 2016. If you look at from 2006 to 2016, average growth is around 2%. But let me tell you what's happening right now. This government is running an economy on tourism, and even on tourism, we should be having 1 million tourists in this country. We're not even up to 800,000. And then we are spending. It's good to spend money to create GDP.
Haven't we been increasing earnings from tourism over the last few years?
That may be true, but what I'm saying is the economy is being run on only 2 aspects. We have the tourism, but again, tourism has not performed that well. Given government's policies, but spending. And spending, a lot of that spending has come from borrowing. I mean, we now have a debt level of about 5.2 billion. This financial year alone, our debt servicing commitment is $635 million, which means that we need to collect about $53 million a month to have about $635 million for this financial year so that we can meet our debt servicing commitment. Now, that means...
Because they're saying those debts are well within the range of developed countries, and that's the way you develop the infrastructure and the roads and the things that they have. Don't you agree with it?
That may well be, but what is the cost of that borrowing? And that translates into what I've said. When you pile up debt, when you have this huge commitment, you got to find that money somewhere. And what this government has done, it has actually hit the guts of the poor by putting 9% VAT, which they promised in 2014 that they won't on basic food items and prescribed medicine. They may have reduced the VAT from 15 to 9%. But those with low income, what do they spend bulk of their money every week? On food items. They don't buy perfume, they don't buy
So you're saying they're taking the brunt of it?
They're taking the brunt of it. They're spending. This is a government which is an expensive government, and there's a lot of reckless spending. Give me one example of reckless spending. For 3 years... Very quickly. For 3 years, I've been asking the government to cut that 9 million per year for golf. In 3 years, they spent $27 million on golf. Until before the election, in this budget, they removed it. And I was asking them to put $3 million to $5 million for kidney dialysis.
So 27 million on golf. Well, they said it's the coverage, it's for increasing the tourism coverage.
I'm not convinced. Where is the priority? So this is a government which has gone on a spending spree, and now we are left with 5.2 billion debt. We may still be able to service that debt now, but the cost to the ordinary people is huge, and many people today in this country are struggling to put food on the table.
So you've stated that 2.6% growth per annum is not good enough growth. What would you do to introduce or implement policies to make it grow much stronger?
Very good question. Very good question, Stanley. Just give you an example. This government has not been able to create that investment environment. Just give you this statistic. The World Bank ranking on the ease of doing business. What is attractive to the investors. We were about 34th place in 2006. Today we are down to 101. For ease of starting a business, we were 55. Now we are down to 160, and there are 190 countries which are ranked by the World Bank. So the business climate under this government has been a disaster. And what
so
we
that's
are,
one way. You say increase investment, make it easier to
what
invest.
we are going to do is we are going to empower people, we are going to empower investors, we are going to put policies, we're going to get rid of all these expensive regulations, and a lot of businesses are reeling under a huge high business cost. And what we are going to do is to ensure that we remove all these regulations, unnecessary compliance cost, unnecessary cost in terms of starting a business, and make the business environment very friendly so that we can attract quality investment, not only in tourism, but in agriculture, in manufacturing, in other sectors. And if you look at the economy today, it's only being driven by tourism, which is under strain, and government spending through borrowing.
Okay. So what would be the signature policies that you'll be proposing, apart from what you've discussed to increase economic growth and to take care of the people?
Two things, Stanley. The first priority for us would be to bring down the cost of food. And as I said to you, all governments, since the introduction of BET in 1992, the SBT government, the Chaudhry government, the Grasse government, had kept zero VAT on those basic food items and prescribed medicine. This government put 9%. What we're going to do is
reduce
VAT.
Reduce or remove?
Remove VAT from those 7 items, and we will add 8 more items. So we will reduce VAT to 0 on 15 items, as well as reduce duties on some of those food items, because many of the food items, attract duties as high as 40%. Milk products attract a duty of 32%. So this would be our absolute priority, because we want our people living below the poverty. 28% of the people are below poverty line, and another 25% are just above the poverty line. So you're looking at about 45 to 50% of the households in this country who are struggling to put food on the table, and that's where our priority will lie.
So zero VAT on 15 food items.
Yep.
You've also proposed a minimum wage of $5 across the board. Now, is it really sustainable?
It is sustainable. I'll tell you how. This is not a figure that we've just plucked from thin air.
Well, where did you pluck it from then?
I'll explain to you. How did we get to $5? The 2013-14 household income expenditure survey, which sets the what we call basic needs poverty line, that is saying you need $220 per week. Now, even you need $220 per week, otherwise you are below poverty line.
Yeah.
If you have an income above $225. Now, even with $5, if you work for 40 hours a week, your gross income would be $200. You take away $16 FNPF, you're left with $184. So government,
but wouldn't that,
government's own, and so that's why I'm saying that if you want to reduce poverty, you got to ensure.
But you also have to create jobs.
Exactly, and there
for
is
people. Wouldn't that make it unaffordable to create employment? It will be too expensive. There will be some industries for people to like for home care for their children and things. There's a lot of issues that the AG has stated in his budget why he cannot do this.
A lot of those are lies. It's perpetrated by some of these big businesses, who have this government in their pocket.
But you'd have to work with these big businesses.
No, I'm saying, and many of the big businesses have to understand that they have the ability to pay. And many of the businesses have told me that if there is a legislation which stipulates that the minimum living wage should be $5 an hour, many of them are prepared to pay. And
But what about the small to medium enterprises?
Well, if you look at our policy, this is another fear-mongering that the Minister for Economy and those in the Fiji First Party are going around and spreading, that suddenly businesses are going to close, people are going to lose jobs. It's never happened in any country in the world. Raising minimum wages has always been good for the workers, has always been good for the business and good for the country. And what we have said is that we will, before we formulate a legislation, we will have direct consultation with the stakeholders. We will have a phased implementation.
Why don't do that, then you propose a figure? But you've proposed a figure, then you say you do the research?
Because I based my figure based on the basic needs poverty line that we already have. You're already saying that 28% of the people are below the poverty line.
But that's sort of a goal to reach, not what you should be doing.
No, that is a goal that we should have reached about 5 or 6 years ago. I tell you what, 2013-14 figure is putting out 220. In the last so many years, we have another survey coming up in 2018. That will show, in fact, my calculation is that prices have increased by 12%. So if you add that 12%, the basic needs poverty line would be 250, and your minimum wage remains at 268. How can you reconcile that? No one.
Okay.
No one can in his right mind and with a little bit of good understanding of economics would ever rubbish what we are proposing.
So just to make people more confident, have you done the necessary research or study to assess the impacts?
We have done this.
Who has done it?
A party has done it. And I can tell you, the people trust me. Wherever I've explained to businesses, wherever I've explained to people, they understand this. And international evidence around the world shows that raising minimum wages is good for the workers, good for businesses. Business people are complaining about productivity.
As they say,
that's another subject that
we'll have to get. As they say in the media today, we are pressed for time. Now, on the tertiary education loan scheme.
Yeah.
What you intend to do there? Because that's been something
we've already announced good policies. When it came in 2014, they had only 600 toppers scholarship, and
do you think it is a good idea?
No. Let me explain to you what we're going to do.
Right.
So government had 600 toppers scholarship, and everybody else had to go on loan. And what we are saying that it was very, very unfair to students who come from low-income families, and because if you had a student who gets 290 marks from one of the schools, comes from a very poor family, that student will have to go and take loan and pile up debt, for 3 years or 4 years, depending on the course and the duration of the course.
Right. So what's the better policy?
So the better policy is we will have another category of scholarship where it will be means tested, which means that those students who would have 250 marks and above and qualify for degree studies in the university and the parental income is less than 30,000, they will get full scholarships. And then the TELS scheme for the rest of the students will remain. So those who do not qualify for any of those two scholarships would still be eligible for loans.
There's an avenue for them
to go and take loans. So the loan scheme will remain. In addition, we are adding this category of scholarship to specially look at the low and poor income families and students coming out of those families.
55 retirement age, change that?
We have said that very clearly that we will raise it to 60. The civil service is in a mess. The teaching profession is in a mess. We have said very clearly that we will do away with contractual employment. We will bring permanent employment structure so that we have motivation, we have confidence, we have a proper system of appointing and promoting people based on merit, not what this government has done, because it's created a big mess.
All right. We now have the last 30 seconds. What's your message to the people of Fiji for these elections?
Well, my message is very simple. The NFP is a team. We have an excellent team. We have excellent policies. This government had 12 years. Time for change. And we know that change is coming, if not already there.
Professor Biman Prasad, thank you for joining me on Simpson at 8.
Pleasure to be here.
That was Simpson at 8 for the evening. We hope you enjoyed the show and will join us again next week. Don't go away. Nimilote Naisorotambua is coming straight after this on My TV with Tali Mangi Mangi. Good night.